they make a big thing of the ship's cybernetics. A new generation of Sirius Cybernetics Corporation robots and computers with the new GPP feature.
GPP? What's that?
It says genuine people personalities.
Sounds ghastly.
Thank you.
It is.
What?
Ghastly. It all is absolutely ghastly. Just don't even talk about it. Look at this door. All the doors in this spacecraft have a cheerful and sunny disposition. It is their pleasure to open for you and their satisfaction to close again with the knowledge of a job well done.
Thank you.
Hateful. Come on. I've been ordered to take you up to the bridge. Here I am, brain the size of a planet, and they tell me to take you up to the bridge. Call that job satisfaction, because I don't.
Excuse me, which government owns this ship?
You watch this door. It's about to open again. I can tell by the intolerable air of smugness it suddenly generates.
Thank you.
Come on.
Thank you.
Thank you, the marketing division of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation.
Which government owns this ship?
Let's build robots with genuine people personalities, they said. So they tried it out with me. I'm a personality prototype. You can tell, can't you?
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of GeekTalk MD. I'm Dave.
Good evening, Dave. Everything's running smoothly, and you?
And
Hi,
this
Dave.
is Moses.
Hey!
Is it? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
And this is episode 19!
Yay!
Yay!
And we got a great topic.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence, or AI.
AIs.
And to help us, we got a couple of scholars.
Yeah.
We've got...
Resident scholars.
Sure.
Pete!
Yeah! Scott!
You couldn't remember his name, could you? Yeah, that's me.
It's Scott. Yeah. So, you know, we've talked a lot about different movies and TV shows and so forth, and in many past episodes, you know, AIs have sort of been talked about, but we had thought that this would be a good chance for us to specifically and to talk about, you know, whether or not they're good idea, bad idea, concerns, questions, examples of, and to get your feedback, to get our guests' feedback on their thoughts about AIs.
You know
Right?
what? Let me stop you right there, because I don't think there's any discussion. It's terrible. I mean,
To have an AI?
Yeah, you only have 18 hours where your heifer goes into heat, and you have to have the bull to find the standing heat in particular, because the actual artificial insemination
Pete,
is less
I'm
effective.
gonna stop you there. The term you're looking for isn't AI, it's IVF.
Is it?
Which is what?
AI means artificial intelligent, not artificial insemination. IVF.
But I have all these notes.
No, the term you're looking for is IVF, which means in vitro fertilization.
I can only imagine how you found those notes.
You guys are terrible.
You sick bastard.
That's okay. When Dave wrote me the message, I thought he wanted to talk about ALS,
Which is what?
which is Lou Gehrig's disease.
That's ALS.
What
That's what I said, ALS.
Oh, I thought you said ALF.
No, no, no.
ALS.
Oh, are we gonna do the ice bucket challenge?
What are you talking about? Okay, we're talking about artificial intelligence. You know what? This is kind of proves the point that we need to create artificial intelligence because there's obviously no actual intelligence out there now.
Stop talking about yourself, Dave. To be fair, I mean the one of the four of us, the one who has the most actual real world scientific experience would be Scott. So Scott, let's have you start off. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence?
Are they pro, con? What are your, you know?
Well, I'm pro artificial intelligence. I mean, you've got to include Asimov's 4 laws.
Oh yes,
Which are, for the listeners that don't know what that is.
All right. Well, the 0th law is a robot may not harm humanity or, by an action, allow humanity to come to harm.
Okay.
right.
First law, a robot may not injure a human being or, through an action, allow a human being to come to harm. Second law, a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where those orders would conflict with the first law And the third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first law or the second law, or in this case, the 0th law.
Okay.
Ta-da!
Very good, Scott. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Round of applause. My hands are going in a circle.
For those of you that are unfamiliar, that does get outlined in the Will Smith film I, Robot.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean,
or the book by Isaac Asimov.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are people out there that believe it or not.
Almost nothing to do with the Will Smith I, Robot movie.
Painfully true.
Okay. We'll get to that after. Let's back it up a little bit. So back to the 4 laws. I mean, most people will agree that these are the requirements for artificial intelligence, but in order for us to build something, it needs to abide by these 4 laws. But premise being that there are plenty of movies that have these laws outlined, and yet there's still loopholes that come into play that allow the AIs to run amok. So, do you still feel that these rules are sufficient in order
to address? First of all, sorry,
they run amok when they're actually using these 4 rules.
Yeah, but to be fair, it would be a pretty boring story if
yes,
if the rules do get followed. I mean, because what's going to happen? Nothing. Everybody's going to be happy, and that's it. Okay, great. So where's the conflict? There isn't one. End of movie. End of book.
Yeah, but in those movies, there is an exception to the rule. I mean, the rule is not being followed. I mean, you can't come up with a movie where they are being followed.
Okay. All right.
Why not?
Because then it's going to be a boring movie.
As Moses says, it's going to be a boring movie.
No, but I mean, I don't think Asimov really thought that out very well, did he? Because it's all kind of in the eye of the beholder as to what constitutes, protecting humanity.
Well, no, it's not. It's harm versus injury. Injury is a physical injury. Punching, stabbing, shooting, whatever. Harm is simply anything which, through its action, could harm a human being, such as while it's by itself, better example. A robot is mining ore. Now, this ore is required for the humans to run their reactors, to run everything.
Okay.
Now, this ore, or the mining of this ore, is also degrading the robot itself. So, technically, under rule number 3, the robot shouldn't do it because it's harming itself. Now, by not mining the ore, he's not injuring a human being. So, there goes rule number 1. If he shuts off his audio receptors so he can't hear anything that the humans are telling him, then because he can't hear anything, he's not breaking rule number 2, which allows him to activate rule number 3 and stop mining. This is why the 0th law was invented, because technically he's not harming a human being. Sorry, he's not injuring a human being, but he is, by his inaction, going to cause harm.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's where the problem is, in the inaction. Like, let's say they feel that human beings are being harmed through the climate change or whatever we're doing to the planet.
Exactly.
And they figure that we have to act to stop humans from hurting themselves. That type of idea.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well, that was...
I agree with that.
That was the central point of the conflict in the movie I, Robot.
Well, most AI debates is about that, right?
Well, exactly. But in doing something to harm a human being, they're breaking rule number 1. Human beings are allowed to self-destruct. Robots can't stop humans from self-destructing, i.e. your environmental changes.
Right.
The robots would just sit back and let it happen because the humans are doing it to themselves.
Well, the idea isn't that they would harm the humans, like you're not going to kill them to stop them from killing themselves, but to, let's say, put them in a safe environment. Call it what you want, a prison, whatever, right? So they're safe, in quotes.
Right. But then which is why the 0th law was designed, because throwing them in a prison harms them. It harms them mentally.
From whose perspective? Maybe
from the human's perspective.
From the human's perspective.
And since it's No, since it is humans that write the laws and humans that program the robots, that's all that matters.
Correct.
Yes.
At which point,
but
at which point the
that's what
humans
matters to the humans, not necessarily to the
And that's what
Exactly.
and based on that logic, that's all that should matter to the AI.
exactly. As well, the humans say, "Let us out." Boom. Law number 2. You've given the robot an order. It has to let them out.
Unless they're going to cause harm to other humans. That's the thing, because it's like Dave was saying, this law is written by humans, but it has to be interpreted, right? And it's only the machines that are there to interpret it. And if you, let's say, tell them how to interpret it, right? Then you have to almost cover every single scenario. Interpret it this way in this case, interpret it that way in that case.
Okay, let's be clear though. We're supposed to be talking about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to get bogged down into a debate about the efficacy of Asimov's 4 laws.
Well, no, you know what? We can't talk about one without really talking about the other, and it's interesting that we got I like the fact that we sort of jumped into the topic and we jumped into the rules, and thanks to Scott, I wouldn't be able to recite them, but thankfully he was able to do so, and then this is where we got, and this is obviously been the debate since AI has even started, but I didn't want to stop him there because this is the kind of stuff that happens almost every single time I or anybody I talk with start talking about AI. They talk about the rules, they talk about failures of the rules, they talk about perception of the rules, and so forth and so forth. But let me take a step back and say, why do we need artificial intelligence? What is to be gained by creating something that thinks for itself? What are your thoughts about that, Scott? Just that. Not whether or not it works, but why should we?
Because it helps us do things that we cannot do ourselves. An AI robot. The example is the new robot that they released. I'm sorry, I don't remember what company it was, which can adjust itself to terrain. Mm-hmm. It's a bipedal robot that can walk
Honda
over rough terrain.
Yeah, Honda,
and doesn't fall over.
Okay, so let me take a step back from that. So
right.
I understand what you're saying, and I completely agree with it. Whether or not the device is going to roll or be bipedal or quadruped or whatever, obviously it needs to have a level of intelligence, if you want to call it that will enable it to adjust on, if you want to say, somewhat random activities, stones or odd or whatever. But are we still talking about intelligence, or are we just talking about a sophisticated program designed to deal with adverse environments?
Well, where do you draw the line? That's the question. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you classify as artificial intelligence?
So this is where we need to go.
Okay.
Yes.
My definition for artificial intelligence, let's go first, is any machine that can learn.
Okay.
It can take something which it has experienced. When it has a problem, it can learn how to overcome that problem, and the next time it comes across the same problem, it just immediately does what it did the first time to overcome it.
Okay,
a machine that can learn on its own.
Okay,
that's what I classify.
Right now, there's a product in the market called the little robot vacuums, and you outline where it cannot go, and it learns the terrain and it vacuums, around the floor and goes back to its docking station. Okay.
Right.
It doesn't.
It can learn.
Sorry.
You gonna say Moses?
It doesn't work anywhere near as well, even by its programming, as anyone would think.
Not yet.
Well, let me tell you about an incident. This is going to make you laugh, because this genuinely happened. One of my first cousins, he lives in New York.
Okay, we're not going to have to censor this, is it?
We're not
going to have body parts.
No, but it is gross. He has a new puppy.
Kids, little boys and girls out there.
He has a new puppy, and he has...
Oh, you're not going to hurt a puppy.
No, the puppy's not going to get hurt. Okay. He went to work that morning, and he's got one of these robot vacuum cleaners. He went to work that morning. The puppy is not fully paper trained yet. He came home, and basically the puppy had an accident in the middle of the floor. The vacuum then activated, and he now has a floor that is perfectly waxed with a thin layer of puppy poo.
Oh, obviously it doesn't work properly.
Interesting. I wouldn't blame that on the machine.
Neither would I.
So once again, user error.
Well, let's face it. There should be a point where the machine should
Diagnose the material that it's running through.
Well, if it isn't, if it's wet, yeah.
Okay, so again, this is kind of what I'm getting at, is that we can have devices that perform certain things, and obviously we need to have a certain sophistication in the devices so that they can behave on their own. Because if a person has to be there, then why do we really need to have the machine except for enhancing strength or whatever? But I'm still not convinced that we need something to be self-aware. It's important to be sophisticated, yes, but does it have to be self-aware?
That's an excellent question, and I would actually agree with you. I in my opinion, for what it's worth,
I'm not gonna say anything yet.
Thank you.
Yet.
This isn't so much a case of need as much as a case of want.
What do you think?
Okay, fine. Just cut me off.
I thought you were done. You paused. You rarely ever pause. You keep tending to ramble.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit confused on what would be classified as AI specifically. Like when you say
what do you consider an AI? That was the question.
I don't know. I might have to go with, well, not with Dave, but to say self-awareness, because the learned thing that you describe, like this machine that's able to traverse over terrain, it's programmed to traverse over terrain. So if you were to take, let's say, a type of terrain that it was not designed to traverse, like let's say it comes to a sheer wall, is it going to disassemble itself and create hooks and scale that wall? It won't. It won't learn in that sense.
Stop.
Yeah.
It will stop.
And so is it really learning this stuff, or is it just designed to be capable of traversing that terrain?
Well,
is it really learning? Like the vacuum, right? The vacuum, has it learned to do this, or is it programmed to sense where the wall is and then make this turn? It's just like a program, an algorithm. Is it learning really?
Well,
it is learning.
Yeah, it's getting data, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Getting data, but if it's programmed for a 20-foot by 20-foot room and you stick it into a 12 by 13-foot room, it will learn where the walls are.
Yeah, because it's programmed to. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. To go straight.
But any artificial intelligence is programmed to do X because it's programmed.
And this is where I see it as you have to go that next level for it not to just be a construct, and for it to be artificially intelligent in the way that I think, what I consider AI.
But it's still programmed.
Can I give a different
Is a
example?
calculator in AI?
Can I give a different example that might actually help with the whole learning thing?
Yeah.
There are now computer programs that exist. I was hearing about this on one of Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcasts.
Oh my God!
Oh, don't start. The man is a genuine scientist.
Anyhow, blah, blah, blah.
Another artificial intelligence expert was on the program, and he was discussing how they'd created this computer that could actually take the collected works of, say, Mozart, and this computer could compose a symphony that would be not a copy, not an extrapolation, or taking bits and pieces from these to make a new gestalt, but rather to create a completely distinct and separate symphony that is very clearly in the style of Mozart.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, and that would be. But
whose opinion? So if you're saying that if this artificial intelligence wrote this symphony and you took it to a professional conductor and showed it to him and said, "This is one of Mozart's lost symphonies," and the conductor would sit there and go, "Yes, you're right. That is obviously one of his lost symphonies."
That's exactly what they did.
So there.
Okay, so I actually looked it up. I mean, we're obviously doing this episode, so I decided let me take an actual glance at this thing called the internet, and and pull off something that I found there with regards to how they were defining what AI actually is. So well,
please tell me you didn't go to Wikipedia.
It's not Wikipedia.
Okay,
but I was doing
fine.
Research on what was his name? John McCarthy, And this is
McCarthy.
this is basically how they were describing what artificial intelligence is. So what they were saying was that it is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. These processes include learning, the acquisition of information and rules and using the information, reasoning, using the rules and reaching an approximate or definite conclusion, and self-correction. So this is basically saying these three elements are what defines whether or not something has intelligence, and if it's a machine or a computer system, then they're classifying that as the artificial intelligence.
Right, which doesn't include self-awareness.
It doesn't.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
So,
That's cool.
so this is key. So, in my opinion, and you know, I do believe I probably heard this through some movie or TV show, but I don't see what the difference is between this definition of artificial intelligence and that vacuum cleaner. And as far as I'm concerned, that vacuum cleaner is not intelligent.
Agreed.
I just don't see it because I believe that self-awareness has to be a part of it.
I think
Why?
no. I think that the one thing that's missing, though, from the vacuum cleaner of all those criteria, is reasoning. It's kind of like
for example, if it's got caught on something, as opposed to it trying to, and maybe it can do this, I don't know, but as opposed to stopping to save battery or, trying to have some sort of method to unstick itself from a corner or whatnot, maybe you'll just sit there and spin. Is that what
no.
you're saying?
Well, no. I think reasoning in this case would be, I mean, the vacuum is programmed to do a specific task in a specific way. To reason, the vacuum cleaner would go, if I did it this way, it would take less time. But it doesn't. Your vacuum cleaner probably cleans the floor exactly the same way each and every time.
Well, it can't, because I know that it does have to adjust for things like table legs and so forth, and which it has trouble with right now. So chair legs and things like that, and it will adjust based on the new location of certain things. So it does have that ability to make adjustments.
Right, but that's just the learning. That's just the learning quotient. Okay,
Yeah, that's just extrapolation.
It's still going to go north south north south north south north south while cleaning. Okay, it's always going to clean that way.
Yeah,
Sure,
it's never going
to go around a table leg, but it's not going to suddenly decide that if it does things diagonally, it'll take less time because of where everything is in the room. It won't change the direction or reason that it can do something in a better way.
Yeah, you're never going to catch the vacuum cleaner suddenly going, "Hey, let's try doing it in a spiral."
Exactly. Exactly my point.
But so are you saying that if it did, then it would be
Reasoning.
That would be reasoning.
And to a certain extent, that would be, in many ways, self-awareness.
Would it?
No, it's not self-aware. It's aware of the room. Okay, it is able to figure out the most efficient way to clean the room, and can change its basic programming, the way it's basically designed to operate, to do it more efficiently.
Okay, fair enough.
So for example, then, is there do we need to have, again, I'll ask the question, do we need to have something that has artificial intelligence, for these robots and to perform better and so forth? So why is it that when people talk about artificial intelligence, they talk about the personality, the emotions, these things?
Because they're dreamers.
Okay.
Very true.
They want to make the robots, androids, whatever, as human as possible. And what makes us human is our emotions, our fears, all that stuff.
Our self-awareness.
But they've always argued that humans themselves are just advanced machines, and that everything that we do and say and so forth are all learnt from years of experience.
You're
and
right.
Well, that's
so
one argument, but that's something that a lot of people would argue against. It isn't just that.
I mean, this is a personal example, but
are you a robot?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
Considering how many people I've heard over the years, I can say with some certainty, no, I'm not.
All right. For instance, you all know my father has not been in my life for most of it.
Yeah.
Okay? But so I really don't know who he is. But I'd be doing something in the kitchen with my mother, and she would just stop and stare at me, and just completely stare at me in total disbelief. And then when I question her why she's doing this, she would turn to me and say, "You are just like your father." And that's not a learned behavior. I did not learn what my father was like.
Because
I didn't experience that. That is purely genetic.
yeah.
nature versus nurture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So, everything isn't. I mean, I agree that 99.9% of everything that we are is our environment. It's a learned process, but there are some that are just hardwired.
Yep.
Pre-programmed, which then takes you back to the argument: are we just machines?
Right.
But I
Biochemical machines.
yeah, but I would say that there are certain things that human beings and some other animals, although I'm sure there's some religious people that are going to argue against what I just say, that just does not fit into that into that box. Well, for starters, the fact that we actually, and I don't mean in the sense of you go to sleep, close your eyes, and then this movie goes on in your head. When I say dream, we strive. We don't. When I say dream, I mean like daydream, or we fantasize, and that's not something a machine would do. I mean, again, going back to the vacuum.
Unless it's programmed to do so.
Right.
Not necessarily. I don't think so. Because again, I just can't imagine a robotic vacuum cleaner saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we did this in a spiral?"
Yeah, but what if dreams and that stuff is just like a...
No. Again, I don't mean dreams as in you close your eyes, you go unconscious, and you get this movie in your head. No, I mean you fantasize.
Right.
Right.
Like a vacuum fantasizing it was a toaster.
What if it was programmed to have it? Like, what if this striving is some kind of an evolutionary mechanism that helped get us where we are today? If it's in there,
If that were the case, then it wouldn't be so in so many horrifying cases so self-destructive.
not necessarily. What if it's meant to be self-destructive as well?
Oh, you're talking about social Darwinianism?
Yeah, not social. Not social. I mean actual Darwinism. That's why that feeling exists. Every feeling. Let's say even love. Love is such a powerful thing, but it could just be these chemicals that are
Right there.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay, just to make sure that we sort of baseline where we're at, because now we're talking about reproduction and all the rest of the things, but it's still quite relevant in what we're saying. And if I could step it back just for a second, that we're talking about artificial intelligence, but we're also talking about learning and how we learned or why we learned, and we can get into the debate about whether or not something is genetically, what I call genetic memory, and whether or not it exists or doesn't exist. I don't want to get into the philosophy and the religion thereof, but what I'm saying is that from a human species perspective, when we create these devices and we're making them smarter and more reactive and able to deal with unknown environments and different situations and so forth, to what end? Like when
several. There's space explorations,
space exploration to do what?
To go to places where human beings can't because it's too hazardous.
Okay.
Or there's also the argument, although it's a horrible argument, no more human soldiers.
Well, isn't the ultimate mission of humanity, when you look at it at the base level, make more humans? Isn't that it? So you're going to have space exploration for room for more humans somewhere else, right?
Yeah, but send the robots in ahead.
Oh yeah,
Right.
of course.
To build a house.
Or to terraform.
Yeah.
Or I mean, that was the whole thing in Blade Runner, if I remember correctly, that all the replicants we're basically, mining and shit like that on
So,
other
so
planets.
are we creating these smart machines just to create a subservient army? Is that what you're saying?
It's entirely possible that that is one reason, but from where I'm standing, I still don't think it has. I don't think that that's it. I think it's more a case of just, wouldn't this be? There's people out there that say, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this?
Yeah. And that's how most science ends up going, right? And that's how most science ends up going awry, is when you have the divergence between the good idea and the person that tries to capitalize on that good idea
Well,
for their own
yes and
selfishness.
no, because I mean, a lot of the great advances in science were because somebody said, "Wouldn't it be cool if we did this?" It blew up in their face, but something else amazing happened.
That happens too.
That happens
But
almost all the time when it comes to that sort of thing. The
okay,
greatest penicillin,
Yeah.
the
yes.
telephone.
Anyway, it's just my point being is there a point at which we would say, the level of the intelligence is enough? And just to Moses's point, I don't think we ever will. And to Scott's point, because we want to make them as quote human as possible. But the reality being is if our end goal is to make them like humans, then we're already failing because the human model is probably one of the worst models to mimic after.
It depends
my
on
opinion.
depends on who you ask. There are some people
Well,
that would argue that it isn't.
despite all of the positiveness that we have in the world, look where it's headed.
I'm not saying that I think that way. I'm just saying that there are some
Okay.
that would.
So
So
that's all I'm saying is that I think that
that's never all you're saying.
I personally think artificial intelligence to a certain degree is good. It's important for space exploration and even within the planet. I mean, there's plenty of spots in the ocean that we can't go physically. That definitely robots and robots that have the ability to think while they're down there, if you want to say think, gather information for us
Yeah,
that
well,
they find.
a good example. I mean, like look at the Mars rover.
Mhm.
I mean, great, wonderful, very exciting. But just imagine how much more would get done if it didn't keep having to wait for NASA to send it its latest set of instructions. If it was able to just decide for itself what to do next.
Hmm. Yeah,
These are all like really big examples. When we take it down to the lowest common denominator, I think this AI is more than exploration. It's more like replacing human labor type of stuff.
Oh, without question.
Yeah. Jobs that we don't want to do, dangerous jobs, all types of stuff like that. And so through necessity, really, we end up with this AI, and it may snowball farther than we thought it would. And this is for capitalistic reasons, just money, right?
And inevitably this is where all these things go. And for our particular listener and whatnot, we can always relate to the movies and the TV shows and so forth.
Yes, please.
And I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but inevitably that's where it's going. And Pete, you're 100% correct that we're looking for ways to do things. It's easier to I guess it's easier to build a bunch of robots to do our digging for us or to do our fighting for us, so forth and so forth. But
wasn't the first big stride in AI a computer called Big Blue that was
yeah,
a
from
chess
IBM,
master?
right?
Yeah.
That's from IBM. Yeah,
It played Kasparov. It played 2 matches against Kasparov.
yeah.
The
But that's not what his purpose was. It's just that's what it was doing, right?
Yeah, just they tried to use that to prove that AI was possible.
Right.
And did either of you guys hear about that one?
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
You heard about the more modern one that beat the Go player?
No, what's
that
that?
game?
Oh,
That game Go?
really?
What is
Yeah.
Go?
It's
Go
it's some people call it Chinese checkers. It's way more complex than even chess. It's
Yeah, you can imagine it's a 19 by 19 grid,
Mhm.
okay, as opposed to chess,
Mhm.
right? So it's more moves on the board, more possibilities.
So they've got an AI that can play this game.
No, it's beaten the grandmaster of Go. I think they had like a World Series, and it won 4-1 against this guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing is that still, even in a game like Go, I mean, it is a very complex game, but it's still I mean, regardless of how complex it is, it's still based on a grid. It's still basically an exercise in logic. So
There's
it's
limits.
not. So it's not reasoning.
Oh, of course.
I mean, even with chess,
logic.
Yeah,
It's just going through several billion
Calculations per
permutations.
second. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Now,
And
if
to be honest,
a computer could design a game all on its own, that would be a different story.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird. Imagine you're trying to solve some kind of scientific problem. You know, why have a mathematician? You have this computer will do all those calculations, and boom, we have the solution.
Yeah, but they do that already without artificial intelligence.
Exactly. We do have computers to do all our calculations for us. That's why we use them.
Exactly.
But
I mean,
it takes the scientists to do the reasoning, to go, hey, what if we did this?
The hypothetical.
Yes.
the thinking out of the box kind of thing.
Exactly. That's what the robots can't do. That's what our artificial intelligence can't do right now.
Right.
Because it is the box.
Right, exactly. I mean, some of the people, through history that we sort of touched on. I mean, I was reading this thing about John McCarthy, and they say that he's really.
Sorry, who's John McCarthy? Forgive my ignorance.
He's an American professor. I think that's what it was, but he specialized in computer science and cognitive science.
Oh, okay.
And between the two of them, his research and his theories sort of started the AI movement. He actually coined the phrase AI. Way back in the day.
So not Asimov.
Sorry, no. Well, okay. I mean, Asimov, he had his literature, and a lot of what we see in a lot of the movies and TV shows may have had inspiration from Asimov's books and whatnot. But even Stephen Hawking's in his days have had papers on artificial intelligence. He was one who had started talking about making sure that we think. What did he say? Think before we create.
Yeah, right.
that was one of his thoughts, that because he had concerns about AI and where it may end up going.
Yeah.
And he basically had lectured saying that it's important for us to make sure that we think before we create, because it matters. Because once it's created, it's too late.
Frankenstein.
Where ideology fails? In the face of free-range capitalism. You can forget about all ideology. Do you ever see this? They have these telemarketing robots. Have you ever seen this?
Telemarketing robots?
Well, didn't they have that big scandal of that with the
talking about for the government thing?
Yeah, the robocalls.
Robocalls? Yeah.
They, I forget what it was for, the telemarketing, but where it was like a woman's voice, and she's making these calls and talking to the person, and the bot is just programmed to have these responses, and it would actually deny that it's a robot. So the person would say, "Are you a robot?" Say, "No, I'm a live person," and then we'll continue talking about, it was Medicare, right?
Oh, interesting.
You have to hear these recordings. It's absolutely uncanny, because it would say, no, repeat after me. I am not a robot. And then the robot would be like, ha, 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 ha. That's funny, sir. So do you want to go with it or not? It's crazy, the kind of responses they had. Yeah,
but actually that's very interesting too, because, when we talk about artificial intelligence, most people automatically assume we're talking about robots or androids. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that at all, because a lot of movies now are using game AIs to create crowds. So like in the Russell Crowe movie,
Gladiator.
Right? That whole Coliseum scene, right? That was all AI driven crowds.
True.
The audience is glad. Okay, so the gladiators or the crowds in the Coliseum, that's all AI stuff, and why AI was superior than just having computer copy paste of people is so that they would behave differently than the image beside it. So you have let's say 10,000 images on the screen, with each one behaving based on the algorithm that has been put into the program, and this creates an artificial intelligent person in the image. So therefore, everybody in the Coliseum looked like they were individual people, actual extras. So, artificial intelligence again doesn't necessarily have to exclusively reside within a robot or
something mobile.
yeah,
Right.
even from a soft perspective. I mean, the Sim Cities, for example, even. Okay, so I mean, if we want to touch into some of our examples of artificial intelligence, Moses, why don't you lead us into some examples of artificial intelligence, and we could talk about some of the negative ones, but I want to talk about some of the positive ones too, because I think that there's still a lot of positive about artificial intelligence, and I think we should try to support that as well.
Well, we've already touched on in the intro very briefly the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those programs were very obviously artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they all learned. They all seemed to be able to change in many ways, and had emotions and such like, and were self-aware. And not all of them were bad. I mean, you recall the one scene where Neo's in the subway station, and with the Indian family,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing bad about any of them. But they were, While on the other hand, you had Agent Smith, who went from being a program to being an outright virus.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few different overlaps there with regards to artificial intelligence. I mean, you had the concept of the robots, you had the concept of the simulated world, and the people within it.
Something like that. What was it?
I don't remember, but anyway.
Anyway, yeah, but that was and the main computer that was actually the villain in the end. Spoilers.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
But I think the two that stand out the most in terms of the history of film would probably be HAL in 2001, which
Absolutely.
and Skynet did
it? In the movie, you know what I'm talking about in the movie.
Mistrust.
Mistrust?
Yeah, it's not the
Okay,
same as bigotry by any means.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, but if you expand this mistrust to all of them, what is that? It's not. Is it racism?
Well,
Are these
again,
machines
no,
a race?
it
Are they a
isn't
race?
because at that point they're technically not alive. The
Technically
robots,
not, right?
the aside from the one robot and the main computer, the other robots were not self-aware.
It has to be something, because imagine if it were for machines.
Why wouldn't it be the same thing if...
Well, that's why I said bigoted. That may be wrong. That may be wrong.
It's interesting.
I don't. It's
Well,
something.
okay, well, that might be something we need to talk about on a side note. Because
Well, that takes me into a different example, but it's in TV. One of my favorite sci-fi series, Red Dwarf, where you've got two artificially intelligent machines. You've got Holly, the ship's computer, and Crichton, the android. And there's one whole episode that's dedicated to whether Crichton is alive, and it's handled, in my opinion, far, far better than the episode in Star Trek Next Generation when they're trying to decide if Data is actually alive.
Interesting. So no, it is an interesting debate. Again, I didn't want to necessarily go into the religion of it, but in some cases you can't really avoid it.
Yeah, well, there are other TV examples. I mean, you got Doctor.
Scott, did you?
Sorry.
I thought Scott was going to say about a movie.
Please.
Well, you're talking negative examples, and of course,
Yeah.
all the examples that we've been given so far are very old. I mean, in 2014, we had a movie Ex Machina.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
What is that one?
there is a perfect example.
What is that?
Basically, a man builds an artificial intelligence, and he brings one of his brightest programmers in to do the Turing test on it.
Mhm.
And basically, what the
Well,
Turing
wait.
test.
That's what I was going to ask you to do.
Yes, I knew you would. The Turing test is when a human being
Learning and
communicates.
adapting.
Yes, talks to an artificial intelligence, and the human being has to decide whether or not he's talking to a person or to a machine.
It's like the Voight-Kampff test in Blade Runner.
Right. Okay. And usually the Turing tests are done by people who know psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, there's a play, and I'm diverging, where someone is doing a Turing test and he figures out that it's a robot because he just rhymed off a random bunch of digits and then asked the person he was talking to repeat these digits to him, and he repeated them right back without problems. Human beings don't do that unless there's some kind of adept. Okay, if I rhymed off 10 digits and then 5 minutes later asked you to repeat those 10 digits, 99% of the population would go, huh?
Right.
Well, to be fair, people that suffer from different versions of Asperger's or autism would.
Exactly. They would, absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, as I said, 99% of the population, no. And more than likely, you're not talking to someone who has Asperger's. So, he decides, at that point, he just stops the test and says, I'm talking to a machine. In this case, again, the going back to the beginning, the 4 laws were not programmed into the machine. Because, spoiler alert, the object of the machine is to get out of the building. That's its objective. And not only does it harm human beings, it kills them.
Okay.
And seduces them. Exactly,
seduces them.
Although there is one tiny flaw to that story.
That being?
That the man that gets sent to do the Turing test is ridiculously socially awkward.
Well, yeah, it's true.
So it made him a very poor choice to make to make that decision.
So,
okay, but
not really, because the experiment was set up so that the android robot, the artificial intelligence, what do you want to call it, had to seduce him in order to get out.
And it did in a big way. Spoilers!
Yeah. Okay? So that's why you had to choose someone who was seducible.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, this kind of touches on what we were talking about a little bit earlier on, and that is that we have this test in order to determine whether or not this creation is human or a machine. But is that what the goal typically is then? If I'm creating an artificial intelligence, I need it to pass this test in order for it to truly be considered a true AI?
No. The test is to determine whether it is an AI or a human.
Correct.
Okay.
But however, the point is to build an AI that can fool people into thinking that it's human. So in some cases, Dave is right. But why? But I agree with Dave in this case. Why do we want to do that?
True.
Yeah.
Why would we want to build an AI that can trick us into believing that it's human? That serves no purpose other than to show how large our penises are.
No. There is
to see if we can, right?
No,
I mean,
there is one other reason, and it does kind of go back to iRobot, and they actually covered it in an episode of Doctor Who, The Robots of Death, was one of the Tom Baker storylines, where the robots were because an android, the difference between an android and a robot is that an android is designed to look somewhat human. And the reason why isn't just aesthetic, but just to make people more comfortable around them. And and if you're just having a machine going around, it might, the reasoning is that, especially if it's able to, reason and converse and feel and think exactly the way a human can, but it doesn't look like a human, it's disconcerting. It's something that would make somebody very, very uncomfortable. That's the point.
But I don't disagree.
No, that's the theory.
I don't disagree with that logic, except the logic that I have an issue with is why would we do that in the first place? I mean, if we have a robot there to clean the streets, why does it have to look like a human?
It doesn't.
Right. I mean, it's there to serve a purpose, and if we identify, I mean, a cop has a cop uniform, so we can identify what it is, saying if we need it. So, if it's there to hand out coffee or give out newspapers or whatever, it doesn't need to look like a human in order to do that. And as a matter of fact, it's probably not even efficient to look like a human and do that thing.
No, but it is more aesthetically pleasing, 1 point, and 2, it makes it more marketable.
Does it? I would like something cheap and efficient to make it more marketable.
Well, but how many people would love to have a robot made that looks eminently... Oh, I can't say that.
Sickos.
Plenty.
But I'm not talking about that market.
Yeah, but it's there, and you can't, and you're going to have to accept that it is.
Fair enough.
In the end, sex sells.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is because of, the size of doorways and things, it's got to be somewhat to like us,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Size-wise and stuff, and to climb stairs or whatnot.
Yeah. Like as a pure example, one of the instances where I can really see an advantage of an artificial intelligent robot of some sort is for things like bomb disposal, as an example. So here is something that...
Well, those already exist.
No, they do, but a lot of what the actual robots do, there's only so much the robot can do, right? And then the rest of it is remote control.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is I can see the need to have that skill for these types of robots. Also for the robots that functionally, I don't see what the advantage is in having a robot that would not want to serve its purpose, short of wanting to create a species or something that we can rule, right? As an example, one of the movies that I wanted to talk about was the movie AI, and in they create this. Now this is a little bit different than some of the other AI type movies because the AI itself isn't the negative part of the movie.
Well, yes, he actually in some ways is.
How do you think so?
Well, go with your example first, and then.
So for people that don't know the movie, basically what's happening is there's a family there, and the Earth has gone through a huge traumatic change-up, but technology still keeps moving forward, and they're creating these artificial intelligent robots, and they're integrating them into society to the point where they want to develop this child that actually has emotions. And the journey is that this child robot, gets embedded into a family that has a child that's critically ill, that's in stasis until they can try to cure the child. And for the time being, they have this artificially intelligent child. What's the word? Sort of
a Pinocchio.
Well, it's not a. I don't know. I don't think it's a fair comparison because in this case, the robot is carrying out its function to love this one person. But what it really ends up happening is that when the cure is found for their actual child, they kind of discard this robot, and it's how this robot tries to survive now that it has been discarded. And it's a very interesting dynamic where you're sort of seeing, in my opinion, the real color of the human species, that if it's a machine, we treat it as disposable. If it isn't, then we don't, right? So maybe that's why making it more human-like is an advantage, but personally I don't see what the advantage is of creating that.
Well, the advantage is if the kid doesn't get better.
True, but then what are you really doing? Are you you're just temporarily substituting an emotion to a robotic facsimile of a child?
Yep. You're satisfying that chemical brain need we were talking about.
Yeah.
And that child is never going to get older.
Unlike yourself.
That child is never going to reproduce, so you're never going to have grandchildren from that child.
Unless you bring him in for an upgrade.
Back to your discussion, Moses, of sex sells. So undoubtedly that may push that.
And that also takes us back to Pete's AI mix-up.
True. So no, but
don't you think that?
Go ahead.
Oh, do you think that pets will be the first foray into this AI before other things, maids and stuff?
Well,
I don't see why not. I mean,
they already are.
The pet rock works, so why not?
There was a little device that you could buy. You probably still can buy.
Oh, right, the
Tamagotchi. And it had an animal in it. Yeah. And you had to feed it and take care of it and so forth. And that is just the starting of the artificial intelligence, if you want to say AI dogs that can follow you around and learn certain behaviors and so forth. These are things that are starting to hit the market already. And granted, they're not fully evolved yet, but it's just a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
There's a theory out there that AI achieving that type of thing might not even be possible. Like, you ever heard of the Fermi paradox?
What is that?
I think I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kinda like-
I think our physics teacher brought that up once, Dave.
Yeah,
Scott, have you
Enrico
heard of it?
Fermi.
Scott?
If I have, I've forgotten about it.
Enrico Fermi.
Enrico Fermi in the
Yeah.
early 1900s, and really the short part is trying to find out how many habitable planets there could be in our galaxy to look for extraterrestrial life.
Right.
But the way it applies to AI is similar, because let's say the idea of the paradox is, because so much time has gone by, they figured that it would take about 2 to 3 million years of evolution for a species to essentially colonize the whole galaxy, if you're going by our level of evolution. And because we came around rather late in the history of the universe, it could have easily happened before we were around. And so if they created AI, and these AI were able to propagate themselves, they would be everywhere right now. We'd be detecting them and stuff like that. So there's a theory that because of that idea, which is, it's not settled science by any stretch of the imagination, it's just that they think that it's possible, it's not possible that could be achieved with AI. And that's why they're not everywhere right now amongst us.
So kind of like the gag on the TV show The Big Bang Theory. I know that at no point in time have I ever invented time travel, because I would have come back and spoken to myself by now.
Right.
Well, within Sheldon's lifespan, anyway. Yeah. But it's an interesting thing that you mentioned that, because I was watching a documentary about space exploration and life on other planets, and the large equation that they're still working on to determine whether or not there's life on other planets. And one of the biggest factors, of course, is life expectancy of the race. And the reality being is, we've only been here for a short period of time. And the reason why this is relevant is because they said, realistically, if we do create some form of artificial intelligence, the reality being is it's more likely some remnants of that artificial intelligence will outlive the existence of us as a species. So therefore, if we're looking for other life out there, realistically we'd probably be looking for the remnants of some other social structure that may have failed through course of events, or got resources got consumed, and the only thing that is left is their versions of artificial intelligence that they had created, and so forth. Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that, because back to what we were talking about, using AI for space exploration, inevitably, yes, of course we have to do that, but simply for the vastness of space, in order to get from point A to point B, we have to create something. And is that going to be our the legacy that the first people that sort of find us, if they haven't already find of us, will be our robots?
Or it could be like in the Star Trek movie where they come across Voyager. Right?
Oh yeah, V'ger. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So anyway, I think we've covered a fair bit of stuff for the episode.
Anybody have anything they want to add?
Any final thoughts about AIs? And are you pro it? Are you against it?
Well, can I just point out my absolute favorite example of artificial intelligence?
Sure.
Absolutely.
It would be two of them, but both from the same thing. They're both from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Marvin the Paranoid Android.
Yep.
And the supercomputer Deep Thought. Which
yeah.
I know that one of your favorites was the battle tank that Marvin defeated.
Why don't you go through that skit there?
Oh God, I can't remember. I can't remember it off the top of my head anymore.
But as you were saying about Deep Thought, yes, it was supposed to be this mega computer, artificial intelligence, and so forth. But really, I don't know about that.
Well, no, because because Deep Thought was without a doubt self-aware.
Yeah, true.
And Marvin was fatalistically self-aware.
Yeah.
It looks like through the whole podcast we've decided that self-awareness is not a necessary component for it to be an AI, but it's just so much more fun to talk about for it to be self-aware. I was wondering about that. Like, let's say we do have a self-aware AI. So the classic example is the Skynet thing, oh, the computer's got a hold of the launch codes or whatever. It's a really basic way to look at it. But you see some imaginings of it where you have this whole race of individuals that are AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have self-awareness, do you have self-preservation?
Yes.
Yes,
Do you?
right?
Do
They
you?
come hand
I
in
think
hand.
I
Do
think
they?
you would.
I would
feel
agree
that?
with Scott. Yes.
Because, like, imagine if you had it structured. Let's say you just have a computer, and
Yeah.
that's your race of artificial beings.
Yeah.
So the CPU is not necessarily going to feel superior to a stick of RAM. And let's say you have actually kind of like the Borg. Look at the Borg in Star Trek,
Mhm.
right? So you have this hive type of deal. So a
Rip-off of
drone.
Cybermen.
So a drone doesn't really have self-preservation. Let's say a part of the ship is destroyed and we have to sacrifice 50 drones in order to harvest them for components to fix the ship. There's going to be no debate or reluctance or rebellion.
Well, that's the case with ants and bees
Yeah,
as well. So
right.
and
It's this hive. Yeah.
yeah, it's a hive mentality. That doesn't mean it doesn't have intelligence.
No.
And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a self-preservation factor, but it's back to Star Trek. Okay, the good of the many overweighs the good of the one. These drones sacrifice themselves, the one, for the good of the many.
But does it?
But yeah, exactly. Does it, or
Okay.
is it just one?
Or is it just
one
simply
organism?
there, and if it goes down, it goes down?
Well, in the case of,
if it doesn't have self-preservation, then when you walk in with a phaser and try shooting at it, it won't shoot back.
No. But hold on. Like, let's say, for example, one of the Borg is fixing something. Okay, I've never seen a Borg jump in front of a shot to protect the one that's doing
well, that's
the work.
true because to be fair, the only member of the Borg collective that actually has emotions anymore, or any sense of self-preservation, or any self-awareness, I mean, originally, is the Borg Queen. Until you got Hugh, none of them had self-awareness. None of them had a sense. They all basically were programmed.
Yeah.
They were no longer individuals.
Yeah.
Or
It's
it's like Scott saying they're all acting as one entity.
But
the whole hive is like one.
But to be fair, they are. I don't think that you could actually even use them as an example of artificial intelligence because they're not artificial.
Oh, I see what you mean. So that actually gets an even better question. At what point, like, if you look at something like Shadowrun, where you got your cyberware and stuff, transhumanism, at what point do you cross the line from transhumanism to artificial intelligence? Does that happen?
At the point that the brain gets replaced, or the vast majority of the brain gets replaced.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The lower organic level. I mean, the less meat you have, the more artificial it is.
Yeah. So technically, like, you're not okay. Cyberman is a cybernetic organism because it still contains its one organic component, its brain. The Daleks are not artificial intelligence; they're also cybernetic organisms because that mutated Khalid is still in there.
That's true.
Okay, the Terminator, while they do refer to it in the movie as a cybernetic organism because it does have, an outer human, like musculature and blood and all that and hair and bad breath, but its brain, all of its inner functions that actually allow it to work are artificial. The Terminator,
Organic portions are just cosmetic.
exactly.
You're welcome.
So you would call it a cyborg, right?
But are you saying that? Are you talking about the peripherals that are attached to the organism, or are you talking about the tool that's actually helping it do the thinking?
Yeah, exactly. The tool that helps it do the thinking. If that part is mechanical or artificial,
So if it's
per se.
51%, then it's artificial intelligence.
No,
No.
it's okay. We're talking intelligence, which
Yeah.
means we're talking the control center. We're talking the brain, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the brain is organic, it's not artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
What if it's partially?
So you mean 100% artificial? You can't be 99% artificial.
Well, okay, then you're getting.
This is what I'm getting at.
Then you're getting into an argument that's going to devolve into religious dogma. I mean, you might as well have the same argument about, does life begin at conception? Let's not go there.
And actually, it's turning away from the specific of the issue. Is that whether or not something is classified as artificial intelligence or not artificial intelligence? The concept here is whether or not we should create artificial intelligence.
Right.
I'm going to say that's for greater minds than ours to decide.
Oh, I disagree with that completely.
What a cop-out.
Yeah.
More accurately, do we even have a choice? That's the other question.
I think we have an opinion.
Okay, you know what? The big thing here was the definition of what it means. And let me ask you this. What about when you do a YouTube search and you get the recommended videos?
That's an algorithm.
It's an algorithm. It's an algorithm, right?
It's an algorithm based on what your previous searches were.
Yeah.
So it's retaining that information.
And it's making a decision.
Not a chocolate chip.
But there's all types of other criteria that go in there. If the more information it has about you, the better it's going to decide what it's going to recommend for you to see next.
Self-correction. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. I'll give you an example of why that isn't artificial intelligence. And I'm going to use a stand-up routine of one of my favorite comedians, Patton Oswalt, when he was discussing TiVo. Have any of you heard this routine?
No.
Okay. Do you know what TiVo is?
Make it quick.
I'm trying. Do you know what TiVo is?
Yep.
Okay. So basically, when TiVo first came out, you had you programmed it to record the TV shows and whatever's on television that you want to watch. Great, wonderful. It keeps it in the box. You watch it when you want to. But the thing was that TiVo also had an algorithm built into it where it would start, after a while, it would start to learn, in quotes, what your tastes in TV shows and movies were, and it would start recording stuff that it thinks you might like as well, based on that. The problem was, say that you watched the movie Seabiscuit, which was about a racehorse. The TiVo would then suddenly give you My Little Pony.
Okay, well the TiVo was a bad example. YouTube is a great example. Because let me give you a scenario, okay? Let's say you have a clear history and you search for Napoleon on YouTube. You're going to get Napoleon Bonaparte, you're going to get Napoleon Dynamite, and etc., right? But if you start looking up things like history, like ancient Rome, the Punic Wars, a bunch of history, and then you put in Napoleon, you're going to have a lot less instances of Napoleon Dynamite and more Napoleon Bonaparte. So the question I have is,
I don't know about that.
Well, give it a shot. Give it a shot.
No, because I've done similar things, and the number of times that I end up getting suggestions for videos for conspiracy theories is just, it's maddening. And I have no interest. I have never demonstrated an interest in conspiracy theories.
So here's the question I have: If the YouTube algorithm, this thing that it does, is not considered AI, but the robotic vacuum cleaner is AI, what's the distinction there? Like they're both
the robotic vacuum cleaner is not AI.
Oh, it's not? I thought we agreed it was.
No.
Well,
no.
It's a stride towards it.
Yeah.
Oh, was it the reasoning was missing? Is that
Yeah.
what we're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Remember?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What if we could do this in a spiral?
So what?
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
Was
Speaking
it
of
AI?
spirals, I think we're starting to talk in circles.
Yeah.
So we've gotten a really good talk here, and we're pretty much running out of time.
But if you could sum it up, what's your final takeaway from this, Moses? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to strive towards this?
Considering where humanity has gone with other similar types of technological advances, I'd say it's a bad idea. Because at some point or another, somebody's going to say, hey, what if we could attach a gun to this? Or somebody's going to say, hey, what if I could stick my private parts into this? And that's always going to be the problem with us.
Yeah.
I like AI. I think AI is a wonderful thing. It'll solve a whole bunch of problems. You just can't go that extra step and make it self-aware. As long as it's not self-aware, it's a very useful tool.
Cool. Pete?
Oh, I think that whether we want AI or not, resistance is futile.
Awesome. Cool. So, for what it's worth, my 2 cents is I think that AI is an absolute must for us to continue to move forward as a species. I just don't think we are ready for it. Because as a species, I do not think we're mature enough for it.
Will we ever be?
Well, we may not.
Yeah,
but
it's just like you're never ready to start a family either.
No, I don't think it's the same thing.
Gotta be
No, I don't think it's the same thing. Because as a species, until we become less self-destructive, I don't think we can try to create a robot or an intelligence to tell it not to be if we cannot be. So
especially if we plan to model it after us.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
That's my 2 bits.
Well, thank you, Dave. That was actually very deep. And and if that sounded like I was surprised, I didn't intend to.
It sounded a little bit rude.
No. It was genuine. It was genuine. Okay, so that was great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Pete. Again,
Yes,
always a
as
pleasure
always.
to have you guys on. Always fun and informative. And thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Moses. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So that was another episode. That was another episode of Geek Talk MD.
MD. Cool. Geek Talk.
Uh-huh.
What did you say?
What?
It sounded like you said deep talk.
Who?
It was Deep Talk too.
No.
But that was another episode of Geek Talk MD.
There it is again.
That's because you started it. Pack up your lucky dice. Put away the Chinese food menus. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks again.